So Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, we're dialing back. We're going to see the Gemara again because we had a hiatus last week, and we're going to learn Tosfot, several pieces in Tosfot tonight. I'm successful, a couple on Dalet Amud Aleph, one on Dalet Amud Bet, and we'll see how far we can go to try to parse a little bit better some of the list of things that are subject to the idea of Baal Te'acher. The Mishnah lists all the different Rosh Hashana times, and for Nisan, not only was it for Malachim, but also for Regalim. And what the Gemara wants to understand is, what does that mean? The first question that was posed was, do you mean Rosh Chodesh Nisan, or do you mean the holiday of Pesach? And the answer came, it's the holiday of Pesach. Why did you say Nisan? Because it's in Nisan. Oh, why did you just say that? I don't know. That's the Gemara kind of actually goes through that. Then the Gemara points out something that should have been obvious to us reading the Gemara, but Tosfot also seemed to point this out, which is that the Mishnah is a liba de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. First of all, Stam Rabbi Shimon, when it doesn't tell you it's Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, means it's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We know that from elsewhere in Shas. And it tells you the Mishnah follows the approach of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai maintains, not only do you require 3 holidays having passed without fulfilling your pledge, but it has to be in the chronological order of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So you'll recall, we saw that if, hypothetically, someone made a pledge of some kind before Shavuot, then they would get 5 holidays passing before they would be over on the Isser of Baal Te'acher. Remember, the Isser of Baal Te'acher means lest you delay or tarry. It's based on the idea, Lo Yachel Dvaro. Once you said you're going to do it, you can't, you can't just keep indefinitely pushing off that which you have to pay. You've made a pledge or commitment of some kind, right? And there are all different permutations. If it's before Shavuot, 5. If it's before Sukkot, 4. Before Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, you get 3. But in that context, in order to fill out the fact that this Mishnah is really following Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's approach, the Gemara then quoted a Braita, which had a slew of different commitments that one could make, I would say, and not all of them are commitments. That's going to be part of our discussion tonight, but different things where if you have gone past some number of holidays, you have hit Baal Te'acher. And in that list, one of the people, so 2 lists. There was a list of kinds of pledges you can make. And we'll see soon that some of those are not actually pledges. So what does it mean? That's we'll talk about in Tosfot. And then on Dalet Amud Bet was also a list of different people with different ideas about how to understand what constitutes Baal Te'acher. One of whom was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who maintains it's 3 holidays in order, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, regardless. But there were other opinions that we saw. We saw the opinion that 1 holiday you're over on Baal Te'acher. You make a pledge on Rosh Chodesh Adar, you better pay it before the end of Pesach, or it's over. It's over. You've been over. You violated. It's hard to keep translating the mitzvah lo taseh of Baal Te'acher, and so on and so forth. Right? What? I believe that was Rabbi Meir. We're going to read it. We'll read it inside in a minute. But we saw all different permutations, and then what the Gemara went into, and we're about to read this inside. So I'm just going to give you 30,000 feet. Is, well, what was the source for each person? And once you know the source for each person for why they argued what they argued about what constitutes Baal Te'acher, then the Gemara's question was, well, how come people 2, 3, 4, and 5 didn't agree with source number 1, that the person number 1 marshaled? How come number 2 didn't agree with 1, 3, 4, and 5? Why didn't 3 agree with 1, 2, 4, and 5? Right? Why didn't 4 agree with 1, 2, 3, and 5, and 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4? Understand? That's the sort of the structure. This happens often in Gemara. They're quoting psukim to prove their point, usually. So there is either it's going to be through all of the different possible permutations. So 1 source, 2 source, 3 source, 4 source, 5 source, and then coming back around to like, well, how come this one didn't agree with that one and that one, and try to fill out the whole puzzle. Or sometimes there'll be a grouping of different shitas. We'll see that together. There's basically like they join together temporarily because they're using the same source, just reading it a little bit differently. So you're sort of like they're at least using the same source in the same way. and someone else didn't use it in that way. What's their answer? How do they understand things? So we'll read through the Gemara, where, as they say, we'll be making a lanin, and only in as much as we actually learned this already. It's not news, anything that I'm saying. That's why I didn't take out the Tanakh again to look at the psukim. Now, hopefully we have it in our head. Oh yeah, we saw psukim in variously. Parshat Amor, Parshat Re'eh, right? And Parshat Pinchas. We saw in 3 different places. Amor, chapter 23, the headquarters of the holidays. Re'eh, mentioning Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And in Parshat Re'eh at the end, dialing back again to say Pesach, Shavuot, Shalosh Pamim B'Shana Yira Kol Zuchat Pnei Hashem. Right? We know these psukim a little bit because we say them at the end of every Yom Tov, and actually in Musaf. So that's there. And then we had a pasuk in Parshat Pinchas that was talking about all the different korbanot that still had to be given, nidrechem, nidvotechem, etc. At the really at the tail end of Parshat Pinchas, like the summary psukim after it talks about Shmini Atzeret, Parshat Pinchas, like the end of Parshat Pinchas. Those are the 3 areas where we quote a psukim from. We're going to see it inside now. I'm just not looking up the psukim again. Again, the first run through of a Gemara, unless you're sitting with like Art Scroll or similar translation or commentary, you guys even with it. So with the Tanakh, otherwise you don't know what the psukim, where is it, what the derivations, what do they mean, right? So okay, so join with me in the Gemara Daf Daled Amud Aleph. Again, now I gave you 30,000 feet, almost the whole schematic of what's going to happen. We'll read it through, and then want to see Tosfot. I'm going to break actually once in this for Tosfot because it's just so fascinating. You don't even think about it. Having to do with printing presses. Villa Regalim. Okay, you with me? I'm in the wide lines, 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom, and 4a. Villa Regalim. That's a quote from the Mishnah. Now, Regalim be'echa b'nisan hu, b'chamishat b'nisan hu. It's from Rosh Chodesh. For Malachim, for kings, it was Rosh Chodesh. So that's not true for this. This is for a holiday. When you talk about holidays, don't you mean the first holiday? I'm Rav Chizda Regel Shabo Rosh Hashana L'Regalim. Yeah. When it said that it's Nisan, it didn't mean the first of Nisan. It meant the 15th. For Malachim, kings, that's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. For holidays, since it's about holidays, it starts with that holiday, which is the 15th. Next, nafkamina l'noder l'meikam alei b'bal te'acher. What's the nafkamina? Whether it's Rosh Chodesh or whether it's Pesach itself, has to do with the issue of bal te'acher. Right? What's that? Rabbi Shimoni, that follows Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya, echad hanoder ve'echad hamakdish ve'echad hamarich. 3 ways that a person can pledge some sum of money to the Beit HaMikdash that is a valuation of themselves, right? Or of consecrating an item towards the Beit HaMikdash, either the item itself or more likely the value of that item. You sell it in the marketplace and the money goes to what's called a Bedek HaBayit, which would be called the general operating fund, the upkeep, the house committee, something like that. So now, Kevin Sha'avru Allah Gimel Regalim over Baal Te'acher. Once 3 holidays pass, you have violated Baal Te'acher. Rabbi Shimon Omer Gimel Regalim Kisidran. He says it requires 3, like the Tanakama, but he adds has to be in order, and the first one is going to be right Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot every time. V'chein haya Rabbi Yoshua ben Yochai Omer Regalim pa'amim gimel, pa'amim daled, pa'amim chamisha. Ketzad, how could it be 3 different permutations? Oh well, Ketzad, how could this be? Nada lifnei Pesach gimel, lifnei Atzeret, this is before Shavuot, chamisha. Lifnei Chag arba, right? Because it always has to be a sequence Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. It doesn't explain why he holds this, just that he holds it. Now, what we get to now, Tanu Rabbanan, right? Our rabbis taught. Now we're going to have a list of different ways you can make commitments or pledges, and the mystery that Tosfot will try to unravel is what are some of these things don't really match the idea of making a pledge per se. We'll see that now. And then there'll be a list of who holds what in terms of how long it is after you've made that pledge before you violated Baal Te'acher. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai will be one of the people on the list. But that's why we're quoting this. Okay? Tanaban, Chavi Adon va'erachin va'acharamin va'ekdeshot chatod va'ashamot olot v'shlamim tzedakot u'masot v'chor u'maser u'pesach leket shicha u'peya kevan shavrolei shlosh regalim over Baal Te'acher. Pause there. Go back to 4a. Get a little exercise. Chavi Hadamin means that you said my my monetary value, like how it'd be sold in the marketplace. That's what I want to give to hekdesh. Erchin is the value fixed at the end of Sefer Vayikra, whatever it is, depending on your age and your gender. There's different valuations. Charamin. No, Erchin is not. No. Erchin is a valuation that a person would do, that they want to give a certain amount to tzedakah, and it's a fixed amount that the Torah tells us. Why would you choose one over the other? You just did. Oh. By the way, why did a person make such a pledge ever? Very obvious. Hey, we don't do it exactly that way, but God forbid a person went out to war, they came back, they survived. To say, Rebbeinu Shalom, I want to thank you. I give my value in tzedakah. Something like that. Today we don't do it exactly that way. We tell someone, oh, I don't know what, your life was saved by such and such by Hatzalah, so you should give them a donation. You know what I mean? Something like that. We'll say, oh, you give tzedakah, something, help others, whatever it is. Charamin, Tosfot point out there's two different kinds of charamin. We're going to see Tosfot inside in a minute, but the charamin are charame gavoa or charame kohanim. The charame gavoa is going to the Bedek Habayit, we discussed before, or those of kohanim, it's going to be gifts to the kohanim. You're giving it to them as call it the plenipotentiaries of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Two different things. That's why it's in plural. V'hekdeshot, you're makdish something. So this object is going to go to the mikdash. Chatot v'ashamot, you owe a korban chatat. You owe a korban asham. You made a pledge to give an ola offering, a shlamim offering. Then it mentions tzedakah. Everything till now had to do with the Beit HaMikdash. But then it throws in tzedakah. Then it throws in masrot, all different kinds of masrot, which are not the Beit HaMikdash. They're to Kohanim, Leviim, depending. Bechor does involve the Beit HaMikdash, but the Bechor is actually not going to go to the Gavoa. You're going to end up really eating it, essentially giving to the Kohen, etc. So Bechor and Maser, actually they go together, is the Maser Behem, right, as discussed. Pesach, Korban Pesach. That's a little bit of a question also, since you can give the Korban Pesach basically on one of two times. Yod Daled Nisan or Pesach Sheni. What is it talking about? Why does it mention Pesach? Korban Pesach is that day. You can give it like in July. You just decide. So what is that?
Why would you be giving it? It's an obligation. So why would you be?
Right. And then there's no pledge because it's like it's a mitzvah, Torah. So what is that? Then leket shicha and peah. Right. Neither the Tosfot. That's going to be right there. Dalet Amud Bet. We'll get to that Tosfot tonight as well. Like, what is that referring to? Since those are not actually lifted out of your field, it's actually a violation to pick them up. Remember, leket, shicha, and peah. Leket and shicha are the dropping of sheaves or of bundles, and peah is leaving a corner of the field untouched. So what do you bal ta'acher mean? Okay.
If we're talking about the
the niyam. Yeah, what? Sorry.
If we're talking about the Korban Pesach, that's offered on the 14th. Not
That's
the
what I mean. Right. So again, so either the 14th or in ER. So what are you talking about bal ta'acher? What's the bal ta'acher? It's day one. You missed it on one day through no fault of your own. Circumstances prevented it. You want to do Pesach Sheni, you could do it. If you were negligent, it doesn't work.
But in terms of counting the three,
right? That's my point. It's like you can't come a year later and be like, well, I didn't give last year, give two this year. It doesn't work that way. So why is Pesach even mentioned? It's not clear, right? It just doesn't say. And oddly enough, Rashi here doesn't help us out on Dalet Amud Aleph, which is puzzling in and of itself. He could have just said what it's talking about. So therefore, when we look at the Gemara on Dalet Amud Bet, now we see the list of the people, right? So here's you're over Bal Ta'acha. Rabbi Shimon Omer. I'm on line 3 now of the Gemara on 4b. Shlosha Regalim Kesidron. That's the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai we were just talking about. The 3 in order. V'chag hamatzot techila. And it starts with Pesach. Rabbi Meir Omer. Kevin Sha'avar Alein Regal Echad. Over Bal Ta'acher. You made a pledge in February. You better pay it tax season when Pesach comes. If you didn't, so you're over. Why do you get extra holidays? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. Kevin Sha'avru Alein Shnei Regalim. Over Bal Ta'acher. He thinks it's 2, not 3. Any 2. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Kevin Sha'avar Alein Chag Hasukot. Over Alein Bal Ta'acher. It's like Doesn't matter. If you made the pledge before Pesach, you get 3 holidays. You made the pledge before Sukkot, you get just that holiday. It seems very harsh. Why? What's the logic? That's what now we're going to unpack each of those. Yeah.
So when we unpack this, those who don't hold that you have to have Pesach first, I mean, they just say it's a
Yeah.
holidays,
Yeah.
are gonna have to go back and explain the Mishnah as to why you need a Rosh Hashana for Regalim.
Yeah. So
Right?
that's okay. Right. So maybe I should pause right there. When we saw the Gemara on 4a, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually interrupted myself because I was going to show you this. The Gemara on 4a essentially said that this Mishnah follows Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, meaning not everyone agrees with him. Now, what's really weird on 4a is that the Tosfot, Dibur Hamatchil Shlosha Regalim Kesidron, 3 holidays according to their order. Tosfot say of 4a. I went back to 4a when it mentioned Shlosh Regalim Kesidron. Tosfot point out Umatnitan to Nisan Rosh Hashana Rabbi Shimon he. This is a weird statement by Tosfot because the Gemara said it. What did Tosfot add by saying this? It's not my question. It's a Pnei Yeshua's question. The Pnei Yeshua wants to understand why are Tosfot telling us an explanation that you could have just read in the Gemara. And Pnei Yeshua says, very simply, it seems that Tosfot did not have this line in their manuscript of the Gemara. That's why they put that commentary here. And in fact, the Pnei Yeshua says, if you open up the Rif in the back of the Gemara, if you open up the Rosh, they don't mention that this is a Mishnah, a Liba de Rabbi Shimon, Bar Yochai. The question is only answered a few pages later. Someone later on wrote marginalia, maybe it was the Tosfot sentence itself, and pushed it into the Gemara itself. So presto, when you see the Gemara printed beautifully in the Vilna Shas, you are none the wiser. But the Pnei Yeshua says that's because there were other people who had other versions of this Gemara that did not list the fact, which is listed overtly later on in the Gemara, explicitly rather, in the Gemara, that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is the Mishnah here. But not everyone agrees with him. And then this Braita makes plain that there are other people who don't agree with him. Yeah. So according to them, it's not Rosh Hashanah the Regalim. There is no such thing. If you hold it's any 2, so who cares about Nisan? Not relevant. Yeah. In fact, nobody else holds this from this list. If you look at the
there is one that said only Pesach, right? So that
only Pesach or only one holiday? Only one holiday.
There's one that said only
Yeah.
Sukkot, never mind.
Yeah, only one Sukkot. Yeah. Well, and in which case it's not a Rosh Hashanah either. It's just that's the time. Yeah. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down from the top, second to last word, my Taima, the Tanakama, right? What is the Tanakama's logic for saying, right? You need 3 holidays, any 3 holidays. Doesn't matter the order. Michti minayu salik, lama limahadr michtav, bechag hamatzot, uvechag hashavuot, uvechag hasukot. Now that there are 3 separate parshiot in Parshat Re'eh that we read every holiday, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, each in their own paragraph. Why did the Torah go out of its way at the conclusion of the paragraph about Sukkot to review again? So why did I mention it? Oh, Shema Mina lebal te'acher. In order to tell you that you should, right? Lo te'acher l'shalmo, you cannot delay beyond 3 holidays, any 3 holidays. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ein tzarich lomar b'chag Sukkot, shebo diber hakatuv. Rabbi Shimon says to the Tanakama, I like what you're saying, but you have one flaw in your logic. If the point was any of the 3 holidays, it still wouldn't have to repeat Sukkot a second time rather. Because in a parsha, meaning a paragraph, whose title is, it's about Sukkot. So why did he mention it again? It should have just said, and also on Chag HaMatzot, and also on Chag HaShavuot. You're in the paragraph about Sukkot. Why did it mention it again? Right? Lama ne'amar, lomar shezeh acharon. According to Shimon Bar Yochai, to tell you that it's last. Right? By the way, what does Tanakama say? It mentions Sukkot because it wanted to say any 3. It's not, what are you harping on it? That's in that paragraph. It's a summary. So it mentioned Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot, man.
If you didn't end there, you could say any 3, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh, good point. Right. It'll be a different sequence or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Meir, my time of dichti. Why? What's Rabbi Meir's approach? What does he hold? Sorry, I made a mistake. I forgot earlier. Yet another pasuk. This one from Parshat Re'eh at the beginning, chapter 12. Muvata Shama Viveta Shama. There's two psukim next to each other that use the two words, 4 words next to each other. End of one pasuk, beginning of the next pasuk. You arrive there and you bring it there. Meaning, when you go, that's when you have to show up with your korban. Next time you're in Yerushalayim, please take this with you. If you forget, then you're over on an isser, about to acher. There's no excuses. And that's what it means. He quotes it from there. V'Rabbanan. Rabbanan say, okay. In other words, how do you disagree? Meaning everybody else. How do they disagree with Rabbi Meir? How do they explain that pasuk? Uvata shama v'aveta shama. It's, again, 2 psukim. Right. Say again, I didn't hear you. V'avetem shama. Thank you. Always learning. V'avetem shama. Rabbanan, ha'ula asay. It's for zrizut. They want you should take care of business. Ha'ula asay. And that's what Rashi says here. Ha'ula asay. The mitzvah asay alav lahavio b'regel rishon. It's a positive mitzvah. You should do it. But if you didn't, you didn't violate anything. Rabbi Meir says, no, if you didn't do it, you violated something. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir says, if the Torah itself is giving you encouragement, you really need to do this now. It's because if you didn't do it now, then you're over and Baal Ta'acher. No 2 ways about it. That's the machloket. Rabban and Rabbi Meir had to understand those words. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, remember he was the one who held what? That any 2 holidays. How do you get the number 2? 3 I get, but 2? My time in Dichtiv. Eila tasul Hashem b'mo'adechem. This is what you should do on your towards Hashem or in the service of Hashem on your festivals. In this pasuk, which is one of the last pasuk, if not the last pasuk, I think. No, second to last pasuk, maybe something like that. At the end of Parshat Pinchas, Eila tasul Hashem b'mo'adechem levad minidrechem v'nidvotechem lonotechem l'minchotechem v'nizkechem v'lishalmechem. So, what's this? What's the miyut of Mo'adim? Shnaya. The minimum of holidays is 2. We'll go with the minimum number, 2 holidays. So if Eliezer says any 2 holidays that went by and you didn't take care of business, any of these things that you owe, so you're over in Baal Ta'achar. V'Rabbanan.
This is just off of the word, the fact that Mo'adechem is plural.
Yes, and that in the same pasuk it mentions all different nidarim, nidavot, so therefore expands outward from there. Yeah. V'Rabbanan. How did the Rabbanan understand that pasuk such that they are in disagreement with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? They follow the sheet of Rabbi Yonah. The Amar Rabbi Yonah, Huksha Kol Moadim Kulam Zelazet, Shekulam Mechapim Al Tumat Mikdash V'Kadashav. They hold like Rabbi Yonah. Rabbi Yonah maintains that this pasuk here is meant to tell you that all holidays, Moadim, Moadechem means your holidays. All of them are like strung together with the same common thread that joins them to the world of Rosh Chodesh and refers to the idea that we have to make a kapara for the tumah of the mikdash v'kodashav. That by the by, between holidays, there is sometimes some element of tumah that wends its way into the place of the mikdash, or elements that are sacrosanct that become defiled. That needs a kapara. So that is learned from the Seir of Rosh Chodesh. And that is something that follows through all the holidays. And that's what this pasuk is teaching us. If it was our sugya now in the Masechet Shvuot, we would delve into more of why that is. But the point here, if you don't understand anything else just now, Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, his application of that pasuk. He thinks it has to do with the minimum number 2 of Mo'adim, and that's what Baal Ta'achar is for. The Rabbanan say this pasuk has nothing whatsoever to do with Baal Ta'achar and fulfilling commitments. It's about saying that all of these holidays require a certain korban of a seir lechatat, and that is levad mididreichem, and that's in addition to, it's accepting all of your nadarim, davot, olot, menachot, nesachim, and shlamim. There's something else, and what's that? The kapara for tumat mikdash v'karashav. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, my time, what's Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon's logic that has to do with only Sukkot as the only demarcating line? The Tanya, as we learned a Braita, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Omer, Lo Yomar Chag HaSukkot, Shebo Diber HaKatuv. Lama Ne'emar. Why is Chag HaSukkot being mentioned in its parsha, even though it was already just mentioned? Lomar Shezeh Gorem. To tell you that it is it's causal. The fact that it's there, it's the end of the fiscal year. right? Why December 31st to January 1st, the end of the tax season, and we start a new year? That's pick a day. You gave I don't know what you took on a tax burden in March, or you took it on December 31. Okay, it's the end of the year, new year starting. That's how it goes. Lahavdol Chag HaAsif. That's the time of the ingathering. You got to pay your taxes. It's the end of the end of the end of the end. So that's it, right? That's the end of a lot of different things that have to be brought. And that's when people have the gathering of the different harvests, etc., right, from the whole year. It's finished. So he holds that's the end. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Hai b'chag hamatzot, uv'chag hashavot, v'chag hasukot, my dar shubei. So these other people, Rabbi Meir, who holds it's after one holiday, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who we talked about before, who holds that it's two holidays. And what do they do with the fact that three holidays are mentioned in Parsha Re'eh in succession? Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot. It has to mean something, right? So, and what's going on here, if that could be academic or philosophical for a minute, whatever you want to call it, is we understand that there's an omni-significance to the Torah. What does that mean? Every word, every letter, we're learning something from it. So if there are Chachmei HaTalmud who are learning something from these words and you don't learn it, you better have something else you're going to learn from there. You have to explain it. It's not just there as a rhetorical flourish. There's heat on those words. There's something over there, right? Put your hand on it, it's hot. So there's something under that. So what is it? So they told you, other people said, oh, that's about Baal Ta'acher. Some combination thereof, right? Either it's mentioned 3 times just to let you know 3 have to pass, any 3. It's mentioned 3 times that has to be in sequence. It's mentioned 3 times because the third one's the main one. But you who hold, it's not about that. It's about some pasuk in Parshat Re'eh. You got to bring it right away, or based on a pasuk in Parshat Pinchas that it's about any plurality, any 2 holidays that pass. So what are you going to do with the fact that Parshat Re'eh mentions Chag HaMatzot or Chag HaShavuot or Chag HaSukkot? You have to learn something from it. What do you learn? That's what's a question on those 2 sages specifically. Understand? Is everyone with me? Is this clear so far? Okay.
And you said Rabbi Shimon without
Bar Yochai,
is the same Rabbi Shimon we had.
Yeah. Rabbi Shimon is Rabbi Shimon
And
Bar Yochai.
This concept of having Sukkot as the end of the fiscal year, that's consistent with his interpretation.
It's not Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's someone else says that.
Oh, it's someone else. Okay.
Yeah, it's someone else. It's someone else. That's it's similar because that's
I thought you said it was the same.
that's Rabbi Lazar bar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon. Yeah, actually.
It's
not really, someone else.
It could be 1, 2,
The-
or 3 holidays. with that thing. Depending on when he makes. the-
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So now, we want to understand for these people, all right? So Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov, you two, who each quoted psukim like out of left field. One took for Parsha Re'eh, the other for Parsha Pinchas. Sahai b'chag hamatzot, b'chag hashavot, b'chag hasukot. My darshu bei. What do you learn from it? Mibayalei lichad Rabbi Lazar amar Rabbi Oshaya. We need it for the drasha of Rabbi Oshaya. The amar Rabbi Lazar amar Rabbi Oshaya. Minayin la'atzeret sheyesh la tashlumin kol shiva. Talmud lomar b'chag hamatzot u'b'chag hashavot u'b'chag hasukot. Mekish chag hashavot l'chag hamatzot. Ma chag hamatzot yesh tashlumin kol shiva. Av chag hashavot yesh lo tashlumin kol shiva. In other words, recalling that you have an obligation the first day of each of the 3 regalim to bring a korban chagiga, shalmei chagiga, and a korban olat re'iyah. 2 korbanot every person who comes has to bring. What if you didn't get it in on that day? Massive volume of people bringing korbanot. You came late, whatever it is. So the Torah says you have tashlumin. You can give it any of the 6 other days of Pesach, any of the rest of the days of Sukkot. Shavuot's only 1 day. We all know about the Tashlumin. When we skip Tachanun mysteriously all sorts of days after, that's how we know it. Oh, we're getting out early. This is great. We got to school early. Get a shul early. The bell's going to go off early. So lahavdil. But what is it? It's that we have to understand. Is there a Tashlumin for Shavuot? It's what a bottleneck. Every single person is bringing 2 korbanot. Never mind Pesach, where everybody's got to have a group of people for 1 korban. Everybody who shows up is going to have 2 korbanot. We're not going to get through this. So no, it's also 7 days. But how do we know? So that's the drasha of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Oshaya. What's that drasha? He says that it's actually learned from Chag HaShavuot, Sukkot, Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot, just as Chag HaMatzot is a full 7 days that you can do Tashlumin, fill it in. So too, Shavuot, even though it's only formally a 1-day Yom Tov, you have another 6 days. And of course, then now you know the next question. Why'd you pick Pesach? Why don't you pick Sukkot? Sukkot is an 8-day festival, because what about Shmini Atzeret? And that's indeed the next line. V'leikash v'chag hasukot, ba'lahalan shmona, afkan shmona. Yeah. So the Gemara says, and now our Sukkot, radar goes off because we know this line. Shmini regal bifnei atzmahu. Yeah. No, Shmini is its own holiday. It's not. So therefore, the initial answer is you're not going to learn 8 days of Tashlumin. It's going to be 7, just like Pesach, because Shmini Atzeret is its own holiday. The Gemara says, wait, the Gemara catches itself. But actually, we learned in the Mishnah, in the Gemara rather, in Masachet Sukkah and elsewhere, that there is only uniqueness to the 8th day of Sukkot for 6 realms. And none of those realms has to do with Tashlumin. And those 6 realms are, right? Amor, Damrin, and Shmini, Regal B'fnei Atzmo. Wait a minute. When do we say Shmini is a holiday in and of itself? The Inyan, Pazar Kashav. For 6 things, Pazar Kashav. What is Pazar Kashav? So we learned it already in Masachet Sukkah. I'll get back to it in a minute. But Aval, in Tashlumin, Divra Hakol, Tashlumin Derishon Hu. But everyone holds that for Tashlumin, actually on Sukkot, we get 8 days, 7 more days in addition to the first day. And that's why it's called Yom Hashmini Chag HaAtzeret Hazeh. Ditnan, as we learned, Mishlo Chag Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Chogeg, meaning here Korban Chagiga, and our Kol HaRegel V'Yom Tov HaAchron Shel Chag, and it includes the last day, the 8th day. Meaning, we're back to our original question. If you want to say there's 3 things, A, B, C. B, we need to learn from somewhere. Learn it from A. Why don't you learn B from C? And it'd be even more expensive. Get 8 days instead of 7 days total for korbanot to be offered. Pazar Kashav, Rashi reminds us what this is, and it tells us Payis. We're going to do a new lottery for which group of Kohanim is going to offer it. Yeah, that's a Payis. Zion Zman Shechianu. Other nafkaminas for Avelos, different things. Where am I over here? A Resh, right? We're going to consider it a Regel, particularly but the Regel Bifnei Atzmo here is with regard to possibly other things, Avelos, whatever it is. The Kuf is Korban. The Korban does not follow the Korban that happened before. In other words, the pattern is broken, right? Doesn't follow, right? We kept going 13, 12, 11, the bulls, 13, 12, 11. So then we get this 1, so it's a skip. That's pay. That's kuf, right? Shin, shir, b'fnei atzmo, has its own unique song because it's its own holiday. It's not going to be like the other days of Chol HaMoed. And then the bet is the bracha. What bracha is that? Rashi here says it's the bracha that they would give to the king before they would leave. Meaning just as they all blessed the king after they did the inauguration of the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim in Malachim Aleph. So too, when they left for Sukkot, they give a bracha to the king on the way out. That's Rashi's interpretation here in Masachet Rosh Hashana. There are other interpretations elsewhere. We won't go into it now. So that's Pazar Kashav, and none of those has to do with the question of Tashlumin. So the Gemara falls back on a well-known aphorism, which is not just an adage or an aphorism, it's actually a halachic principle. And that's the second to last line here in the Gemara. Tafasta maruba lo tafasta. If you grab too much, you'll get nothing. If you overstep. Tafasta maruba lo tafasta. Tafasta muat tafasta. If you'll try to grab less, you'll hold on to it. What does this mean? So essentially, and there's more to say about this, we won't go into this so much tonight because I didn't even touch one Tosfot of the 4 I prepared. I tried, but at least we have better grounding for next week. Is the issue that if this drasha turns out not to be right, and it's not really 8, then we won't be left with anything. Will be attached to any holiday, and like how will we know about Tashlumin? But if we say it's attached to Pesach, it might turn out that really it is supposed to be attached also to Sukkot. It would get 8 days, but minimum 7 days you're going to get, regardless of whether you go for Pesach or Sukkot with Shavuot sandwiched in the middle. So let's go with the smaller one, because for sure that's covered because it's in the bigger one also. The bigger one's 8, 7's included. We'll go with 7, so it's included no matter what.
It's leaving open the possibility that 8 is the right number.
Yeah, but it remains undefined, meaning it doesn't actually conclude that.
And if in theory 8 would be the right number, it would also apply to Pesach, right? I mean,
Yeah, sure.
In theory.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, in theory, but it doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. And don't forget, one other thing I was going to say, for Pesach actually says 7 days. Like the Torah actually makes that clear that you have like till the end of it. But it's not clear on Shavuot because it's a 1-day holiday. It doesn't say. George, please.
So if everyone agrees that Shmini Atzeres is its own holiday, why can't it stop at 7 and Shmini Atzeres do you get Shmini Chagiga and then Riyah also?
Again? No, because you're already there.
But then why wouldn't you get another 7 days from there? It's over.
Because there's no separate Chagiga and Re'iyah for Shmini Atzeret. How come? Because you're already there. The Korban Re'iyah is, right? V'lo yirat pnei Hashem reikam.
Oh, you're there.
So you're already there and you just did it and you didn't leave. Right? The Torah says don't show up empty-handed. Don't see Hashem, so to speak, without bringing a Korban. That's Korban Re'iyah. So you brought it already. So the question would be, what if someone came in the middle of Sukkot? And the answer is they'd have to give once for having arrived. Less clear.
But when they.
You're a doctor, you have to run to the hospital.
You
And
wouldn't have 7 days.
Be in Yerushalayim.
You came in the middle.
Yeah.
You do have, and then you wouldn't have, you have to stop it.
Stop between two.
But when you talk about being a Baltaka, when they say you have to go through Sukkot, just the first days or the whole week?
Oh, right. Good question. That's the whole week also.
So that.
Right.
So that.
Because it's not on the list of, it's not on the list.
Argument that it's not, that's really.
Right. It's
Because-
only regular financial for 6 things.
Right.
Pazar,
Got it.
Kashav. Otherwise,
So for
it's the 8th day of Sukkot.
For Baltaka, it's not.
Correct. Otherwise, you have to throw up the whole argument here and say like, oh, well, Shavuot, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, that's 3 right there. We don't do that. Clearly. It has to do with the act of going up to the Mikdash.
Understood.
The 3 pilgrimage festivals, yeah?
But by the way, it's worth pointing out, which I discovered myself when I moved to Michigan, that the shul I was in Michigan actually didn't skip Tashlumin for 7 days after Shavuot, just Isru Chag, and that was it, and then they
Yeah.
resumed right away.
Yeah,
So, I didn't realize that not everybody.
Right.
For 7
but now you moved here and what an upgrade.
Is that why you moved?
It's unbelievable. What an upgrade. The light of Yom Tov continues to shine in Skokie, Illinois, and places like it for all sorts of days. Right. And that's why, by the way, that this should answer the question, by the way, jokes aside, there is no Sfeika de Yoma for Tashlumin because the whole idea of Tashlumin only exists where? In Yerushalayim. And since we really, really do know the days of Yom Tov, right, it is not really a mystery. So then the 6th of Sivan equals the first day of Yom Tov and the only day of Yom Tov Midoraita. And then you just count up 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So on day 13, you got to go back to saying Tachman because that's past day 7. You always like, oh, after one more day, no, because that Tashlumin business is related to giving Korbanot, which only happened in one place. That's in Eretz Yisrael. Remember? And people want to argue that extra day are kind of trying to say, well, maybe today, maybe Shavuos this year was really on the 7th of Sivan. No, it wasn't. Understand? Because we have the calendar. Again, then we go back. Everybody knows this. It's like it makes me crazy because then there's always someone. So why don't we just cancel the 2nd day already? Because the Gemara said not to cancel it already in the Gemara in Beitza and several places in Shas that we're supposed to have 2 days in Chutz La'aretz. It's not a suffix. We know it's not a suffix. Chazal knew it wasn't a suffix. Let's move on. The Gemara now asks, what? They'll talk about when you're in Israel. So if you want a contradiction, you can get out of it. I have a way you can get out of that contradiction permanently. Okay. So anyway, let's go. Okay. So look at the bottom line. The bottom line. Ella says the Gemara. Lamai hilchata katvei rachman al chag Sukkot. So what? Tell me if the whole thing is that we're learning Shavuot and Tashlumin from Chag HaMatzot. Why are you putting Sukkos into the mix in that pasuk, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot, right? What's it doing there? And again, we're sort of falling back on the old arguments. Well, it's there because it's 3 holidays really that have to pass. Well, it's there because it's the one that matters most. It's not a redundancy. It's to tell you, right, the different shitas. But these two people, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rabbi Meir, who both took psukim from elsewhere, Parsha Re'eh, Parsha Pinchas, respectively, they don't hold of that. So they think these 3 terms, Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaShavuot, Chag HaSukkot, is teaching about Tashlumin. So then now the Gemara is asking it, okay, so tafasta mu'lo, tafasta mu'at, tafasta. So you're learning Shavuot really back from Chag HaMatzot, that on Shavuot it should be 7 days as well. So why Sukkot mentioned? That's the question of the Gemara. Right? To connect it to Chag HaMatzot, top of Hayamad Aleph, Ma Chag HaMatzot ta'un lina, just as Chag HaMatzot requires lina. What's lina? You can't leave on the night of Chol HaMoed. Motzei Yontif, you can't leave town. You got to stay till the next morning. Rashi, the first one on page 5a, ta'un lina, leil cholo shel moed. Can't leave. So back in the Gemara, Av Chag HaSukkot, ta'un lina. For people who want to go home on Motzei Yontif Rishon of Sukkot. First of all, it'd be a really bad idea because Simchat Beit Shoeva wants to miss that. But let's say, who said you had to leave. You can't leave that night. You have to wait till the next morning.
Is that the same word that we have in Kohelet? Lini halai. It says in
Yeah, lalun, to sleep.
Lalun,
Yeah. Oh, lina. Ta'un lina. Samach Chag HaMatzot ta'un lina. Af Chag HaSukkot ta'un lina. I'm in the Gemara. Second line. V'hata minala. How do you know that Chag HaMatzot has an element of lina? Well, the Torah says so. Where? On Parashat Re'eh. Uvishalta v'achalta v'makom asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha bo ufanita v'boker v'halachta l'holecha. It's in the morning, so it says so. Okay. Now the Gemara wants to know. Wait a second. V'tanakam Rabbi Shimon shouldn't be Rabbi Elazar. Ben Elazar should be v'tanakam of Rabbi Shimon, meaning Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because they hold that you need all 3 mentioned. Remember, all 3. I'm saying it again and again. All 3, either because any 3, or all 3 because it has to be in sequence. So how do they learn about the requirement for Tashlumin for Atzeret? How are they going to figure that out? Because they don't use these 3 words for that. They're using it for Baal Ta'acher. So Minalahu, how do they come up with it? Yeah. Nafkalahu midatani Rabba Bar Shmuel, Datani Rabba Bar Shmuel, Amra Torah, Menei Yamim v'Kadesh Chodesh, Menei Yamim v'Kadesh Atzeret. So they learn it from the drasha of Rabba Bar Shmuel, who says that the Torah tells you have to count days, and by the way, full days. Right? If you look at Rashi on the last of the narrow the first rather of the narrow lines of Rashi, the Rashi there, Manei Yamim Shenamar Bamidbar Yudalf Ad Chodesh Yamim. Yeah. So how much is in a Chodesh? You count the days to figure out how much is in a Chodesh, and not hours. And not saying a month is 4 weeks, but a month is made up of 30 days. So then, Menei Yamim v'Kadesh Chodesh. And then you make the Kiddush HaChodesh happen. So we also say, Menei Yamim, count days v'Kadesh Atzeret. And you should sanctify Shavuot after counting series of days. Ma Chodesh Limnu Yav, as the Chodesh, the month, goes according to its component parts, which the Torah defines as component parts of days, so Af Atzeret Limnu Yav, so too Shavuot will be counted up based on its component parts. Ema Atzeret Chad Yoma. Maybe you want to argue that Atzeret is only 1 day and there's no Tashlumin. Yeah. So Amarava Atu Atzeret Yomi Maninan Shavui Lo Maninan. Are you telling me that for Atzeret we only count days to get to Shavuot and we don't count weeks? Amar Mar, didn't the sage teach? The sage happens to be Abaye. Mitzvah Lememne Yome U Mitzvah Lememne Shvuei. It's a mitzvah to count days, but also to count weeks. Therefore, in other words, since it says Shava Shabbatot Tmimotiana, a Shabbat is 7 days, ergo Shavuot itself is also 7 days. There's a flaw in this, which the Gemara will point out presently. Ve'od, a further answer, Chag Shavuot Ktiv. It actually mentions that the name of the holiday is B'Chag HaMatzot, B'Chag HaShavuot. It's in Musaf. So it's in right there. It calls it Shavuot. It doesn't call it Atzeret there. It calls it Shavuot. Why? Because the character of it is Shavuot. So Tanakam and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai say oh, well, we learn from these three words also about Tashlumin, because the phraseology is Shavuot. The fact that 3 holidays are mentioned to tell you 3 holidays have to pass for Baal Te'acher. The fact that one of those holidays is not called Atzeret, but it's called Shavuot, and the fact that the way we got to Shavuot was counting 7 weeks, that tells you that Shavuot is also, in quotation marks, also a week long. Not the Kedushat Hayamim, but the ability to do Tashlumin on the Korbanot. Again, a massive bottleneck. Tons of people showing up, and they all come with 2 Korbanot in tow. How are you going to get through it? Again, Pesach is fewer Korbanot because you have 20 people maybe eating the same Korban. They're all, right? And they don't all have to come to the Beit HaMikdash. One comes to represent the family, a clan, in fact. So, but that's not Shavuot. So what are you going to do? Now, the Gemara says to Pesach, Bar Mikra Regalim hu. Yeah. Okay, what about Pesach? Pesach is actually, you can't, there's Baal Te'acher of Shalosh Regalim. You can only give it on one day. And that day is 14th of Nisan. That's about it, right? So what's talking about, right? So right? Tivu Pesach by Mikra Regalim hu. So the Gemara said, right? So Pesach Zimna Kavili lay. Either you give it or you don't give it. It's like it's not no two ways about it. So Amar Rav Chizda Pesach Kedei Nazba. All right. So what are we talking about here? We're referring to the notion of Pesach. It doesn't actually refer to the korban itself per se. It can't. It doesn't. It wouldn't wash. Rav Sheshet Amar my Pesach Shalmei Pesach. It's the shlamim you're going to give on Korban Pesach. It's not going to be actual shlamim. The Gemara says, wait, shlamim. In the list of pledges, it actually says shlamim. It's there on the list. So you can't argue that. So Tana, right? Shlamim habayin machmat Pesach. But Tana shlamim habayin machmat atzman. The Gemara will go on here. We'll stop here in this spot. But
operate as a Tashlumin already, and that's already well past the 7 days. So how does that fit into this?
We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah. Well, I'm going to get there tonight. I'm going to get there tonight.
No, we have next week.
We'll have next week. We'll get there next week, God willing. It's actually after 8:15, and I don't want to keep people. God willing, next week when we gather, I will not review this whole Gemara again. Instead, we'll talk a little about tzedakah. We'll try to do Tosfot, Dibra Matchil, V'Hacharamin, tzedakah Umasrot. We'll skip Umasrot on the bottom of the page, but we'll do the one Leket Shicha and Peah. I have a lot to say on it, but we're out of time for tonight, so we'll leave it for next week. Adkan for tonight, and next week, God willing, a cliffhanger. Come back for the exciting conclusion involving the Bali Tosfot, at least on this daf. Adkan for tonight. Some of the Bali Tosfot on this daf. Adkan.